The Community Development and Housing Committee is called to order. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
As a reminder to all in attendance, this meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the county's YouTube page. Calling the roll, Mr. Hauser.
Here.
Mr. Jones.
Here.
Mr. Kelly.
Here.
Mr. Schlepper.
Here.
Ms. Simon. Here. You have a quorum.
Clerk, is there any public comment?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Lou?
Good morning, everybody. In light of our situation and the budget season is coming up for the county, and also I would like to remind you, the housing crisis right now is going up to the next level due to the state budget and also right now the ongoing federal budget. We know some of the housing programs for the existing unhoused population are already in jeopardy. However, in our community, we still do not have enough clean, healthy, safe housings for everybody. In this committee, lots of time we talk about county will purchase lands or sell lands for different purposes. How about let's think about purchasing some good properties to start build county housing? Due to the federal budget, the federal funding hold, it happened earlier this year. I already have heard of people who have been housed maybe from next year or earlier this year. They already have to face housing court for eviction. Because during this federal funding hold, CMHA, our housing authority, couldn't really pay their rents on time. In this case, housing crisis actually is really getting worse. Till now, every day, we have new people coming into the shelter system for the very first time in their life. They avoided recession, 2008 housing crisis. They even survived throughout COVID-19, but now they have to come to the street or homeless shelter. Please considering getting lands for housing. Thank you.
And that concludes our public comment.
We have approval of the September 29th meeting minutes. Can I get someone to make a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. Clerk, can you call the, and I want to acknowledge our county prosecutor. I don't know if prosecutor wanted to say some words maybe before or after the presentation. Okay. Clerk, can you read the first item in the record?
Resolution 2025-0284, authorizing a tax certificate sale, purchase revenue generating agreement with NAR Solutions Incorporated, doing business as NAR Ohio, LLC, in the amount not to exceed $40 million for the sale of tax lien certificates for the period November 1st, 2025 through November 30th, 2027.
Who's here to speak to the item? I just want to level set as our county treasurers come into the podium. I would like our committee members to make a decision today whether we will move this legislation forward. Several of the committee members asked that we pull this legislation back, which we did, but let's not drag our feet. Let's make a decision one way or another today. Thank you. Okay, first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. It's good to see you this morning. My name is Brad Cromus, and I am the county treasurer. I'm here today to answer additional questions I understand that may exist with respect to this contract and proposed agreement for the sale of tax lien certificates. Prior to the meeting today, I know you all were provided with copies of our RFP worksheet, as well as a breakdown of where we anticipate liens taking place by district, our delinquency policy, and correspondence prior to this meeting that answered some of the questions from the prior conversation. So with that said, I'd like to call forward our Director of Purchasing, Paul Porter. Paul has some additional information he'd like to share with respect to policy and, with respect to procedure and how this procedure tracked versus our prior tax lien purchase agreement most recently in 2018. So with that, I'd like to call Paul forward and he can share some information.
Morning, council members. Thanks for the chance and the opportunity to address you about this one. I know that there were follow-up questions about this being conducted as an informal solicitation versus a formal solicitation, as well as the fact that there was a reissue that was done after the initial closing date. So
Excuse
I
me,
wanted
Mr.
to-
Porter, could you just state your name for the record before you continue? Thank
Thanks,
you.
Sharon. Paul Porter, Director of the Department of Purchasing.
Thank you.
So even though this was done as an informal solicitation, when I looked back through everything that happened as part of this, this looked more like a typical formal solicitation in that one of the main differences between informals and formals, other than formals are collected by the Department of Purchasing, informals typically go through the departments that issue a solicitation, is the length of time that those solicitations are open. So this one was open for 30 days initially, the same required length that we have for formal solicitations. And then we did an initial, so that was the initial release, and then we did a reissue for 2 business days, a Friday morning through a Monday afternoon, to ensure that interested vendors had an ample chance to submit a proposal in response to the solicitation. The last time around in 2018, there were 3 responses received to that solicitation, and we ended up receiving 5 responses this time around. There were 3 initial responses and then 2 responses to the reissue. So when I look at, should we do a formal versus an informal, especially when you consider what the dollar amount of a transaction is, my preference as a director of purchasing is to get as many proposals as possible so that there's, broad competition amongst vendors and we get what we can consider kind of the best deal for the county. In this case, I was pleased that we were able to go from 3 responses last time around to 5 responses this time around and kind of have, again, more competition between vendors. And to that end, last time around, which was also done kind of more informally, so there weren't records within purchasing that I was able to look back at for vendor notifications. This predated both the treasurer's tenure and my tenure in this role, and it looked like the treasurer's office at the time in 2018 handled the outreach. This time around, there were 48 vendors that were registered under the Financial Services Commodity Code in Infor who received notice of this solicitation. And we also worked with a trade association, the National Tax Lien Association, to notify them of the solicitation. They are a registered vendor in our portal and they received notice. And they let other members of their trade association know about the solicitation because not all vendors that are out there, especially vendors in other parts of the country, are registered on our portal since it's a local website that we maintain. So as far as notice to vendors, there was a lot of outreach on this one, and I think that's part of why we received more responses this time around than last time around. When I looked at the scoring process that was done, which for formals and informals, when it's an RFP, we have to have a scoring rubric that's part of the solicitation so that all vendors know exactly how their proposals are going to be scored. It's an apples to apples comparison. There's X amount of criteria that each vendor has to meet. And a panel of reviewers from the county score those proposals so we can kind of have a uniform, here's what the lowest score was, here's what the highest score, and ideally for an RFP, the highest scoring vendor is the one that should get the award. That was the case in this solicitation. We had 3 vendors that were kind of clustered at the lower end between 73.4 points out of 100 and 74.6 points. Then we had 1 vendor that was 80.8 points, and then the highest scoring vendor was 88.8 points. So quite a bit higher, again, when you were taking all of the different elements of their proposal into account. The RFP was reissued for 2 business days, that Friday morning to a Monday afternoon, largely because of a technical issue that a vendor experienced. we sent questions to Infor, our software vendor that manages, the ERP system, but our supplier portal in particular is the relevant piece for this. So when our notification of the event went out, something in that vendor's server displayed the closing time as 9 p.m. instead of 9 a.m. It was not anything on our end. Our technology
Mr. Chair,
looked
to
correct.
Mr. Porter,
Yes.
which vendor are you speaking of, please? If you
That
can-
one was Tower Capital Management. They were
Okay.
one of the vendors
Okay,
that
I
reached
just,
out.
because you're talking about different reasons why this was not a formal bid. And if I
Sure.
can, through the chair, take the first one, if I can. Number one, you said so you could get more
Mm-hmm.
responses based on last time. So is that your position, that the reason a $40 million contract to sell our taxpayer out to a third party was so you could get more responses? Is that one reason?
My perspective is whatever solicitation method we choose, I want it to result in the most responses. And in this case, doing an informal rather than a formal made it a little bit easier for the vendors to respond while still preserving kind of the competitive process that comes with both formal
Okay,
and
so you weighed bypassing the formal bid process for a $40 million contract, which is way more than any other contracts that we have that are similar. But you decided because you needed to get more response, that's why. I don't want to know your perspective.
Sure,
I want to
sure.
know the reason. It's because you wanted more responses.
to maximize the number
To
of
maximize
responses,
it.
to maximize
Okay,
competition.
and in fact, that didn't happen because you only got 3, right?
We ended up with 5 responses.
No. The first round, you only had 3.
Correct.
Okay, and then you had to send it out a second time because of a technicality.
Correct.
And just so happens that the second time you sent it out, you got a vendor from Nebraska?
I believe, yes, that's where the awarded vendor is from.
And the
That was one of
contract,
the vendors
okay,
that
and the
responded.
contract that's usually used for this, at least last time, had a clause in there that I think that was removed when you went out with this Nebraska vendor, that there was standard language in the contract, and maybe you can't speak to that.
I would have to double check about the
Okay.
contract language.
So we'll
but I
hear
know-
about that. So the second reason why you went with an informal bid on a $40 million contract was what?
I'm not sure. My perspective was about maximizing a competition
So that's
for
why.
this one.
Okay,
That-
well, I-
That's the primary
Okay, well, the
reason I
primary,
used it.
for me sitting here, the chair asked us to be decisive today. I'm going to decisively say that's not an adequate reason to send a $40 million contract out to bid because you wanted to get more of a response. That is not adequate. In fact, that's a little insulting to me. When we put all these processes in place to make sure that we do things up, and to me, this is strange on a $40 million contract. So I'm going to say right now, Mr. Chair, that I'm not going to approve this. I wanted to go back to a formal process because the reason and rationale I was given the first time, by the way, maybe a little bit the first time when we talked about this. So that's my position. I don't think that's an adequate answer. When there's taxpayers who are losing their homes potentially, that the reason why we're doing this is because we want better response. And in fact, we didn't even get it. You had to send it out again quickly, and ended up with this out-of-state vendor. So that based on that and other things, I would like this to go back, and I'm not going to approve this.
Appreciate it, Councilwoman. Ms. Porter, you can continue.
Thank you. So I want to highlight that with informals, we frequently do second efforts. With formals, we don't always do second efforts. Many times we'll have a formal solicitation, and because it's open for 30 days, we'll make an award to the highest scoring vendor or the low bidder, depending on what type of formal it is, without going back out, to get that competition between vendors. In this case, the initial solicitation period was lengthier, and we did a second effort that's in line with what we've done with other informal solicitations. And, again, from my perspective, if we're able to get multiple proposals, that's going to result in the best opportunity for us to do business with a firm in a way that's going to work for the county. I want to highlight that this had the same type of rigorous scoring metrics as any formal solicitation would. We notified as many vendors as we would have for a formal solicitation. The primary difference here, like the format of the solicitation itself was similar, like the contents of the RFP. The primary difference would be that it was issued by the Treasurer's Office instead of by the Department of Purchasing. So in a way, it was easier for vendors to respond. For formal solicitations, for example, we don't accept responses via email from vendors. For informal solicitations, we give vendors the opportunity to respond via email in addition to a submission in the portal or a physical submission. Looking at the way that this was conducted, it's not my perspective that this was somehow less rigorous of a process than our formal, or that, any vendor was treated differently than we would have with a formal. My concern is if we do a formal and a vendor reaches out and says there was an issue like what we experienced here, the vendor that had an internal server issue that resulted in a display of a different closing time, instead of being able to do a fairly brief reissue because this was an informal, we would have been faced with either making an award selection from the 3 vendors that initially responded, or doing a full 30-day re-release, or working with our Department of Equity and Inclusion to get kind of a waiver on that 30-day minimum posting period if we tried to do a reissue on the formal. So I believe that having done this as an informal enabled us to work through that issue with the vendor in a fairly quick way to go out, reissue it, make sure the other vendors were still notified had there been any other interested parties, and then make a selection from there. And I'm happy to answer any questions about the process. If there's questions about the contract or the services themselves, I'd ask the treasurer to answer those. But I don't know if there's any further questions you have about kind of the process or the rationale for the selection the way it was.
I'm interested in the process. Before you go, Mr. Porter, I'm going to let Councilman Jones.
Actually, if you had more to say, I'd like to hear.
Go for it, Mr. Porter.
I'm good. I was just piling up my notes.
If there's any more that needs to be said, I'd like to hear it. If not, I'll go.
So I do want to hear the process. Ms. Porter, would you prefer to say it now, or did you want to wait till Councilman Jones's point?
Process.
Sure. So in this case, we did purchasing worked with the Treasurer's Department to look at what was done last time around. My feedback to the treasurer when he reached out about doing this was, this didn't really come through purchasing last time. It was done in 2018 just through the Treasurer's Office. I wasn't able to find a vendor list from last time around. I wasn't able to see, how those solicitations, they appeared to be just collected by the Treasurer's Office. But something I want to stress there is this predates when we had the Infor supplier portal. We didn't have that in place in 2018. Now I can go back and look at historical information in the portal. Once that went live in 2020 and 21, it's a lot easier to find, some of the stuff in the portal. But this was one that had not been done that way last time around, so I offered my feedback and suggestions about putting together a quality vendor list, making sure anybody that was registered for financial services in the portal was notified of this solicitation, and again, trying to make it a thorough RFP that had multiple scored elements so we could come away confident that, we were choosing the vendor that was going to work out best for the county. Format-wise, like I said before, the RFP itself looked much more like a formal solicitation document than an informal solicitation. All of the vendors got a list of the questions that they needed to respond to in the RFP, and that list of questions had a corresponding score for each question. And they were aware that the review and scoring of their RFP was going to be done based on those criteria, not, someone in the treasurer's office opinion about what vendor they wanted to work with or something like that. And looking at the scoring sheet here, it's clear that multiple folks worked with the treasurer's office to independently score these proposals and then come up with a recommendation as a scoring panel for that highest scoring vendor.
Just to be clear before I let Councilman Jones go, so you could not find the list from 2018 from people who did bid?
We were able to see the people that had bid, but I wasn't positive the list of all the vendors that had been notified at that time. There was a partial list that was around, but had it been issued by purchasing, we would have been able to see, like, purchasing sent it out, purchasing sent it to these emails. If there were bounce backs, here's the date that the bounce backs were corrected. Things like that would have taken place had it been done as a solicitation through purchasing in 2018. But it was done by the treasurer's office at that time. So our records in purchasing were more limited than, we're going to have more thorough records for this one. So, in the future, folks will be able to see how that solicitation was done in 2025.
And then for my clarity, how did we create the list that we did send the RFP to? Was it people who've done business with the county in the past? Did we look up different companies that could do this work? How do we create that list?
Sure. There are multiple ways that this was done. So working with that trade group, there were vendors that are registered, that do specific tax lien work that were notified. I mentioned there were vendors that are registered in our portal for financial services that were notified. And that, again, kind of goes along with my approach of casting as wide a net as possible, making sure anybody registered for financial services got this solicitation in case they have a division that deals with tax liens, even if they're a larger organization like a bank, for instance. So it was kind of a combination of research by the treasurer's office and then notifying vendors that were already registered in our supplier portal.
Then my last question, I'll open it up to the committee. The vendor we selected, have they met the requested insurance requirements?
My understanding is yes, that they met the requirements prior to the contract being recommended for award.
Great. Any other questions? Councilman Jones?
Thank you. Okay. So, as I've listened to what you said, I haven't heard anything that changes my mind that the proper process for a $40 million contract is a formal bid. It's just, for me, it's black and white. It's a $40 million contract, that's a formal bid. It should have been caught internally within the whole, and within the administration. It should not be on before council to have to send it back to you. You should have caught it within your own departments and taken care of it. So despite everything you said, I am voting as Councilwoman Simon, and I urge our colleagues that this is to me, it's a matter of fact, very formal. It's nothing personal. This is just the effective way of doing business. I mean, we got the plain dealers sitting here. $40 million, are we just gonna start doing informally? It should go back, do it the right way, and come back. Our residents will probably thank us for not letting this happen before Thanksgiving. So I urge this committee to send it back and allow them to do it the proper way. Thank you.
Councilman Kelly?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I simply have a statement. I mean, obviously, there wasn't a perfect process here. But even if the process were perfect, there's deeper concerns that can't be ignored. Selling tax liens hands over public authority to private, profit-driven entities. Their goal is not neighborhood stability, not homeowner recovery, not equity. It's return on their investment. We have public tools we can and should be using instead, whether that's through the prosecutor's office, the law department, structured payment plans, or targeted outreach. We don't need to outsource compassion or control.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Sleppert?
Good morning. This is definitely a contentious issue. Just up front, it's going to be a no for me as well. I kind of just put together, I work really well off of lists, so I kind of wrote down some bullet points and I'm just going to share. And again, I share everybody's sentiments up here. This isn't personal. I appreciate the amount of work that's gone into this and some of the questionnaires, but at the end of the day, first of all, the vendor of choice is an out-of-state vendor. I think that's problematic to begin with. There were inconsistencies in the process. I don't think we should set that precedent. I share Councilman Jones' perspective there. Ideologically, I have some concerns with this, just generally speaking. You know, using language, you know, well, why now? Looking at this frequently asked questions list I see in front of me, you know, well, to make sure that all taxpayers pay their fair share. My concern with that statement is, you know, well, if you can't pay, you can't pay. And as the treasurer said when he presented this to us before, you can't squeeze blood out of a turnip. Kicking the debt down the road is not going to help anybody. We need to have some real policy and programmatic change. And I think that's a big piece here. I also think that the timing is interesting and suspect. We have a budget deficit at the county level, and now we're trying to sell $40 million in tax liens. You know, come on, the truth there. And I believe that we shouldn't be trying to balance our budget off the backs or the homes of people in this county. Bottom line, I understand we have to collect taxes. I understand there's an enforcement mechanisms, but I also think that the county can collect their own taxes and that we don't need to outsource this. So I think this is a policy discussion, and that's my personal opinion on this. But for me, this is also going to be a no, and I think we should send it back.
Thank you, Councilman. Any additional questions or comments?
I don't have any questions on the process, but I don't know, Brad or Mike, if you have any comments on the, you know, tax lien sale overall. So thank you for your time.
Okay, members of council, thank you again, and thank you, Director Porter, for coming forward to share some information about process. Just some comments I'd like to share for purposes of the record, as I understand kind of the direction we're headed this morning. So multiple times today, we've heard $40 million contract. I want to be clear that this is not a $40 million outlay of county funds. It's a contract to bring money into the coffers. So it's a little different in that respect versus a contract where we're paying a vendor to do some service for the county. So I think that's an important distinction. As Director Porter discussed just now, I think his remarks make pretty clear that the difference between formal and informal in this case is not really a functional distinction. We've followed pretty much every element that would otherwise be qualified for a formal bid. So there's not a functional difference. If it's a policy difference with respect to whether a tax lien sale as a process is valuable or not, that's a different conversation than a process conversation. So I just want to make that note. From my perspective, and I think perspectives of treasurers all over the state, including all of our largest urban counties, tax liens are an important tool for us. We do all of the work that we do through the lens of community benefit and with an eye toward helping our taxpayers and preserving our taxpayers' interest in their property to the extent possible. We believe this tool helps us do that for reasons mentioned in the prior conversation we had on the 29th with respect to interest rates and whatnot. So I'm happy to continue having that conversation. With respect to the concerns Councilman Schlepper raised just now regarding timing, I'd like to point out that we began the process of investigating doing a tax lien sale well before there was any understanding that there was a budget conversation that we had to have. So the timing is coincidental. It has not, they are not in any way related. I just want to be clear about that. And then before we conclude today, because we do have representatives from the prosecutor's office here, I would like to hear from them as to their perspective on tax liens generally, as well as process and anything else they might like to add. Thank you.
Thank you, Treasurer. We're going to let Councilman Kelly go.
Thank you. I have one question. So under the legislation, at the end of it, it says declaring the necessity of this resolution to become immediate. That's an emergency clause. Why does it have to be an emergency clause?
Through the chair to the councilman, I think that language was drafted with an eye toward the potential of doing this in fewer than 3 readings. Obviously, we chose not to go that direction ultimately as a process point. Most of what we've done with respect to this has been with an eye toward transparency and making as much of the community conversation available as possible. We know this is something our office hasn't done in 7 years at this point. So that was the rationale for including that language.
So the emergency clause isn't the same as the suspension. I mean, you weren't looking for suspension, right?
No, well, so through the chair to the councilman, we had considered internally having a request for suspension. We ultimately elected not to go that direction. I suppose the argument could be made that given where we are in the calendar year, there's an interest in making sure that we were able to conduct the sale prior to engaging in our regular tax collection process in December, January. So if that speaks to the emergency clause and this kind of like interest in doing it with some relative expeditiousness, that would be the rationale.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chair, to that question, I mean, the time frame for this, if you go out to formal bids, you'll still be able to be on a time frame to collect what you need to collect by next year, right? So I don't understand this urgency either.
Through the chair to the councilman, that's not correct, actually. If we had to go back and reissue a formal bid, that puts us out of the window for doing a tax lien sale prior to November of 2026. So we would be full year behind at this point.
Okay. So in the meantime, I believe that our internal collection processes are continuing. I asked that last time and I was dismissed. The answer was no, there's nothing really going on with.
That's not what I said.
What did you say?
No, we continue to do all of our daily activities with respect to tax collection.
Well, the prosecutor's office is the one collecting, so by this
The
getting.
prosecutor's office does enforcement action on foreclosures. The daily work of doing tax collection is our work.
I think they're doing additional work that they'll be able to speak to, Mr. Treasurer Crooms. Okay, I don't think this timeframe is necessary for us to do an informal bid.
Noted.
Councilman Jones?
After that, I don't need to say anything more. I'm ready to vote.
Appreciate it, Treasurer. Just before we close out, if our county prosecutor would like to say a few words.
Good morning. Come on, madam. I'm Michael O'Malley, your Cuyahoga County prosecutor. I was called here today to ask, answer any questions you may have regarding tax foreclosure. As everybody in this room knows, the Cuyahoga County Prosecutor's Office handles tax foreclosures for Cuyahoga County. And so, but the decision whether to have a tax lien sale, lies with the treasurer. So really, I don't have an opinion on that. But I did bring Adam Judy, who has been with my tax foreclosure unit for 18 years, 17 years, and has been supervising for 4. So he's been supervising for 4, so he can tell you the process. The only thing that I would add that I do feel is important is that we do handle the tax foreclosures for Cuyahoga County. And when the question was posed to me, and then I immediately called Adam, what did not happen that should have happened was the contract in its near completed form should have been run through my office so that Adam, who knows more about tax foreclosures than anybody in Cuyahoga County, could weigh in on what he saw as the weaknesses with the current form of the contract, and that was not done. And so here we are. We were asked to be here. Whether the treasurer chooses to have a tax lien sale certainly is up to him, but I think where we need to weigh in is what are the details of that contract? Because ultimately, it impacts our office as well as all these potential parcels that would be going through this process that may be stuck in an area that we can prevent, where they're just hanging out there further decaying without a mechanism to quickly get it back into whether it's the land bank or some other entity.
Assistant County Prosecutor Adam Judy. Thank you, Michael. I've been working with Brad Cromus now for about 2 years. I've been with the county since 2008, and I've been through multiple negotiated sales with different purchasers, Woods Cove, Aon, Plymouth Park, some players in the area that may not be as well respected or known as the current purchasers. I assisted with selecting this vendor. I was on the committee that assisted with it so that we were able to meet with them. And I think what Prosecutor O'Malley did indicate is our only real concern is the language of the contract. And we talked to the treasurer this morning, and I think there's still time for us to go ahead and get those provisions in there that we're looking for. So we were asked to be here. I guess if you had any questions for us, I would be happy to answer those.
Any final questions for the prosecutor?
Sure. A little more, share a little more, what were those concerns that you had?
So under previous versions of the contract, there was language in there that would determine how much interest was given back to the purchaser on a certain kind of lien. So if they were in bankruptcy, for example, the lien would be repurchased, and the statute says that you have to give that interest to the purchaser. So you refund the certificate price and also interest. We had incorporated language in previous contracts where certain liens, for example, if they were on a payment plan or paid in full, then the repurchase of the certificate would not include that interest back. So it was just a way to keep a little bit more money in the county. But more importantly, I mentioned those previous purchasers that we had, like Woods Cove and Aon Financial. They would prosecute the tax lien certificate, they would foreclose, and those properties then would have a judgment of foreclosure. And they would elect not to sell them because the property had deteriorated, gone into disrepair. We would have to then go ask the court to vacate and dismiss that and wait a whole year before we could tax foreclose. And by that time, the property's gone. So we would ask that language be incorporated that automatically does that or puts the burden on the attorneys for the purchaser to get rid of those cases in instances like that. And I think there is still time, if you were to grant the contract, that we would be able to incorporate that language. So
Okay, well, a little wonky, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I like wonky. And it's a valid point. I think from this body's perspective, it's more as the elected officials, and again, not casting a cloud of aspersion on anyone, but there's a perception. You know, a formal process is the bottom line. If it's informal, even though it's 30 days, went out 2 more days, and the winner came out of the one that, you know, came in 2 days later. Again, you know, that can all be above board, but again, it's always about perception too. So formal is the ideal way, and then you clear all those issues up. So I want to thank you for your perspective.
Okay, Councilwoman Simon?
Thank you so much. Can you explain what happened to this clause in the contract? Was it in there? This clause to which you just spoke was in our standard contract, or wasn't there? Did you see it in the contract in light when you were negotiating along with the treasurer?
So historically, the prosecutor, has been involved hand in glove with doing the contract. This time around, that didn't happen yet, so.
What do you mean it didn't happen?
I worked on the front end helping out select the vendor. I did a score sheet and did all that. And then the contract just showed up without us having an opportunity to go all the way through it. We, in the past, have had those provisions I was talking about in previous contracts, and those were just part of the negotiated sale without going through this whole process. But I've been assured that we can get that language into the contracts.
Were you told why it was taken out?
No, I don't know if the prior contracts were relied upon with the county and prior purchasers, so I don't know if they even used that as a template. I think they were relying on the contract with NAR and working through law department to.
So they didn't seek out the prosecutor's office, even though you were working hand in hand with them throughout the process. For some reason, they chose not to include you in something you've been included in the past, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And you understand that perhaps this contract provision was excluded from a contract from the vendor?
We're still working on the details of, you know, who put the actual contract together and what parts were excluded.
I would like to know who put this template together. Hold on. I have other questions, and then we can talk
sure.
about a contract through the chair. In terms of collection, I asked about that. I asked the treasurer about, or Mr. Porter, about the collection efforts at the prosecutor's office. If this contract or process delays us a few months, what is your process for collections, and in what context does that occur?
We work on foreclosing. We foreclose on about 2,000 parcels a year. That's our capacity right now. Any given time, there are 35,000 delinquent properties. Now, not all of those are eligible for foreclosure. There's certain statutory requirements that need to be met. But we will send letters with the fiscal office. We have a delinquent tax outreach that works with us. They're actually, they may be in the Treasury now. They fall under Treasury. So on those other 33,000 parcels, we're sending letters, trying to reach out, and some of them are on our letterhead. But we just don't have the capacity to file 35,000 foreclosures. So the tax lien certificate is another tool that a lot of counties use, and it's good at getting to these people, getting the delinquency before they're too far down the river where they can't get it. The liens that they're selecting are more viable. Like, we would be able to foreclose on them if we had the capacity, and we would recover by sheriff sale. So I think the end result is the same. It's just capacity issue, so.
Well, I have a question about your collection efforts. So you're sending out letters to people, right? Mm-hmm. And these are people who are subject to foreclosure or right before a foreclosure is filed? They're on the block, Chip?
Yeah,
They're ready to
correct.
go. So you send out letters en masse. What was your last, tell me about the success of these letters going out and what the return is?
Okay, for example, with this tranche of parcels that were offered for tax lien certificate sale, last fall, our office worked with Delinquent Tax Outreach and the treasurer to send out letters. I believe there were about 6,000 letters that were sent out. And since then, that list has fallen all the way down to about 2,500. So we've collected or gotten people on payment plans, or for another reason, they've been removed from Schedule A, the list of parcels eligible, to 2,500. So I do believe another round of letters just went out, certified mail as required by statute, that is probably going to even take that list down further. So I know the contract is up to $40 million. There's no way it's going to be near that. If I had to guess, it would probably be 25 million of liens that are sold.
So is it in the county's interest to allow time for your office to send these letters in conjunction with the other department from the county, to send these letters out to collect, which seems this is quite successful, right? From 6,000 down to 25, rather than sending out these parcels to a third party to collect and then have to impose interest. Is it in the, makes sense financially for the county to enable your office to continue to send those letters?
Well, I think our collection strategy right now, if we were to advance on these 2,500 parcels, it would be a tax foreclosure. So I don't know if any further letter campaign would help on these, but we are identifying parcels that, for example, we may sell next year as a tax lien certificate, the county may, that we would start sending letters on this November. So
How many, what do you think how many would that be perhaps that you're looking at that might be sent to this third-party vendor in Nebraska to collect on versus us sending out letters and having a success rate, great success rate, I would say? How many parcels do you think would be subject to that?
that we would send out this fall letters
Yeah,
on?
that might otherwise be sent out to Nebraska.
I can't really answer that. I don't know how many, like
10,
I said,
20,
there's up to-
30, 40,000?
There's up to 35,000 that are eligible
Okay.
for letters. That doesn't mean that they've been certified delinquent or advertised delinquent.
Okay.
And traditionally, the Delinquent Tax Outreach has sent out many letters. I mean, one year they sent 17,000 letters. And the problem we have is we're not getting as good of a return because vacant lots, abandoned properties. So the list of parcels eligible for these letters is, we're really targeting our collection tactics. So we're hitting the right people that will actually pay. And I think this list of parcels are those. And now we're down to a point where, I mean, the tax lien certificate may be the best tool.
Best for the most collectible ones or the best tool for those that aren't collectible?
Those that have been identified, we sent letters last November that are collectible. So
You think if we can collect internally, I'm not clear, why would we send those out?
we don't have the capacity to file that many more foreclosures. So the tranche or the group of parcels we're going after meet a different criteria. We're out there trying to, clean up the neighborhoods, take the abandoned vacant properties, the vacant lots, and so the parcels that the certificates would cover are, we could foreclose on if we had the capacity.
Okay, because I'm not clear. I thought what I understood you to say was that there's letters going out and there's a set of potential people from whom we're going to collect that are cream of the crop, my words, that most likely you're going to collect. And then that's part of the list. And then there's a list that's more difficult to collect, vacant lots, things like that. Those are two subsets that we're talking about, right?
Correct.
And the cream of the crop that I'm designating as such is one that it would benefit the county to retain versus ones that aren't very likely to collect from, that would be sent out to a vendor. Am I right to have two categories?
Well, that latter category, the ones that are not as collectible, that's where we end up with problems, because if we were to sell that lien, then they're not going to have the incentive to prosecute it, because
Okay.
if they don't sell the property, then they become the owner of those properties.
So the latter, both of these subsets right now would be subject to the sale, as I understand it. Is that your understanding? That if this sale were to go through, that the cream of the crop, as well as the not collectible, likely collectible, would be going to this third party?
No,
Okay.
the cream of the crop is, as you put it, the ones that are going to the third-party purchaser.
I would say they don't want the ones that are uncollectible because they know they're uncollectible.
But are we what I'm trying to get at, are they sending these out, the cream of the crop, to the vendor when you guys could be collecting? That's, I guess, ultimately my question, and I'm not getting a clear answer. I'm sorry.
I would say, I don't want to speak for Adam, but I would say certainly they picked out the 6,000 parcels. We sent letters to those 6,000, right, this previous year. And we got a collection rate of 60% on what they deemed to be the cream of the crop. So 60% of those delinquent parcels paid. And again, that's the cream of the crop. My guess is that they don't have a lot of incentive to take parcels that they know are vacant or in poor shape. So they're looking for the cream of the crop.
Mr. Prosecutor, who's they? Is it the vendor and/or the treasurer? Who are we talking about?
In my eyes, it would be the third-party vendor who wants to purchase these, aren't interested in properties that people don't have the incentive to pay taxes on.
I see.
Would you agree, Adam?
Absolutely.
Thanks. So the cream of the crop probably, and they have the selection, unilateral ability to select?
Yeah, I mean, yes, and that's in response to the Vacant and Abandoned Properties Council. We all meet monthly, and we come up with a white paper back in 2016, because what was happening with Woods Cove and Plymouth Park and their predecessors is they had to take everything that was offered. And included in that were both of those buckets of properties, those that are collectible and those that are not. And what happened is we had them walking away. They were acting just like a bank. So if they couldn't recover on a parcel, they would foreclose on it, and it would just sit there with a judgment, and we couldn't even go forward then. So the cream of the crop is what they're taking now. And I think it's in response to the community housing and interest groups, and as well as the treasurer in our office, to allow that to maximize the amount of money that we can collect without leaving property to further deteriorate. So, and I think our 3,500, people that came in and paid, out of that 6,000 is one of our good collection tools, so.
But it's also why it's vital that we have language in the contract that if property is not collectible, that we can somehow quickly get that property into somebody who's going to utilize it, whether it's the land bank or something, which is why it's so important that before contracts are issued, especially in a subject area where the prosecutor's office handles this subject, that they bounce this contract office so that through the years of experience that we have, that they utilize that, and that the law department doesn't go on this down a path where they just don't have the expertise like we do to handle and know the pitfalls of what they may or may not be doing.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Councilman Kelly?
Thank you. So just a question. I'm listening to this all going around here. And I guess my question is, do you think a third-party vendor is a good idea for the county?
Yes, I do. And having worked with these type of tax liens since 2008 and helping with negotiating the sales, as long as the vendor is reputable, they come in, they meet all the statutory requirements, and they adhere to the requirements of VAPAC and our office, then I think it's a good collection tool for the county. We have so many delinquencies in this county, and we're doing as much as we can with what resources we have. And I think the treasurer's sale to a third-party vendor of tax liens is within his discretion and is a valid, legitimate collection tool that we would endorse, yeah.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I won't belabor us much longer. Treasurer, if you would like to close us out.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate that. I also don't want to belabor the conversation further. Just to answer the question with respect to the contract and how that was developed. So we did, and as the prosecutor's office alluded to, the sale pool itself was developed in concert with VAPAC, Legal Aid, other organizations to kind of right-size that and make sure that it was a collectible group that protected the vulnerable. So that's thing one on the sale pool. On the agreement, we did use the 2018 contract as a starting place. It was something that we talked to the vendor about, and then in consultation with law, developed the agreement. So we did talk to legal counsel. It was internal legal counsel. As we go forward, we'll continue to have conversations with the various and sundry legal experts to make sure that we put our agreement together in a way that is best serves our county, and we'll be reviewing our options going forward for doing so. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, just why didn't you include the prosecutor's office and only go to law when historically the prosecutor's been at the table?
So through the chair to the councilwoman, the prosecutor was at the table for the process. We went through law because it was a county contract, and typically county contracts flow through the law department. At least that's the advice and counsel we received. So that's the rationale.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, I thank everyone who came out and spoke today. It has been, I was gonna call a roll call vote, but it's been recommended that we take no action. It was, I'm not sure. Come on, Trevor.
Mr. Chair, Trevor Meckler, County Council staff. Based off the council members' comments, I would probably ask, is there a motion to move this out of committee? And it likely seems like there won't be one, but I still think you should request, is there a motion? But it doesn't sound like there's going to be a motion or a second, so then it would just stay in committee.
Just clarity, are you saying leave it in committee without a vote?
Well,
Understand what you're
you can ask,
saying.
is there a motion to send it out of the committee? And based off the discussion, it doesn't appear that there's going to be that motion. So it would just stay in committee and ultimately be not up for council consideration.
As opposed to, but how does that allow them to move forward in the proper way? How do they move
They can do
forward?
that on their own. They don't need you to take action on this particular legislation if it sits in committee.
They can go on their
So
own.
you're saying you
Yeah.
let it die in committee?
That is up to the discretion of the committee. You guys have the option to either send it out of committee, then you would have to vote it down, or again, if the chair asks, is there a motion to send it out, and it doesn't appear that there is one, that would be the case.
So the motion would be to hold it in committee?
No, you don't have to vote on that.
We don't
The-
even have to vote on that.
Yeah, typical, like every item, is there a motion to send this to committee? It doesn't sound like there's going to be one, therefore there probably would not be a second, and therefore no vote.
Okay.
Had you not come forward, we probably would have just voted. What are the strengths and the pluses and minuses of voting no or just letting it die in committee? What are the pluses and minuses?
The difference is that you
other-
would have to take action at a council meeting if you were to send it out of committee.
So to the councilman's point, because I was going to call a roll call. You're saying that's not needed, Trevor, just,
Well, I don't know what the roll call motion would be because there wasn't a motion or a second, so there's
Right.
nothing, you need a motion and a second to have that roll call?
okay.
You know, that's
Can
why I
I
like
ask-
having. Go
Can I
ahead.
ask a question?
Go for it, Councilman.
So
For now, no.
if I recommend to send this out of committee and nobody seconds it,
Right.
it just doesn't go.
Correct.
And then if I can't through the chair, and then the treasurer's office can go ahead and start their process without us and come back. They can bring back their, whatever they're going to do.
I'll just say this.
They don't need us.
I think that's why I think we have a great staff. I mean, everyone gets a sense of where this is going. They've just offered us a process that I think is smooth, and I like it. If we just leave it in committee, we don't have to go through the formality of voting no in the full council, and the message has been sent to the administration. Next time, catch it internally. Don't let it come here. Don't let it come before the whole world. Just do the right thing, you know, in your own, whatever what right thing means. But take care of it internally. You know I will. Let's keep going. So I support what the staff is recommending.
Sounds good. So I think I have to ask for a motion to see if we want to move this forward.
So moved.
Not to move forward.
No, just don't second it.
Okay. Do I have a second? Not seeing a second, this item will be held in committee.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Seeing no other items, this meeting is adjourned.
All right.